The following program was made for viewers like you. Not those other mooks. They're a bunch of commie-loving, pimple-headed, Birkenstock-wearing zaraza. But not you. You're beautiful. And special. So hit the like and subscribe buttons in ways that display your greatness and well-cultured tastes. The following program is about to begin. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the following program. I'm your host, Joe Neerman, aka Good Lawgic. If you care about January 6th and its potential impact on the forthcoming elections, if you want to know how things are developing and how things may play out, because let's face it, for the last 4 years, until the recent new development that the left decided, let's try gaslighting the world into believing that it doesn't suck balls. Let's try gaslighting Americans into thinking that everything is wonderful. Well, until that happened, until that new development, which is relatively recent, I know it feels like we've been hearing it for ages, but it's really only been the last 3 or 4 months that they've been saying that. The main primary talking point, speaking point that we heard from Biden for the first 2-3 years of his administration was that evil MAGA is out to get you, as evidenced by, did you see what happened on January 6th? The world can never forget what happened on January 6th. Oh my God, January 6th. It was like Pearl Harbor multiplied by 9/11, multiplied by the Civil War. This was just, it was unbelievable. In the human history, no one's ever seen anything like what we saw on January 6th. And somehow democracy prevailed and you held. And that seemed as if, like, for the first 3 years, if you went judging based on the first 3 years, you would assume that would be the speaking point that we'd be hearing about over and over and over and over and over again. Now, on the cusp of Donald Trump potentially being reelected. Oh my God, save democracy. And they're still throwing that out there. I mean, they're not going to let go of that ridiculous claim. But it's sort of taking a little bit of a back seat. I only noticed this just as I was preparing my introductory thoughts. I was like, we really haven't been hearing so much about January 6th. They say he's a threat to democracy. Maybe you could say that it's because of the whole shooting that they're a little concerned about saying that, but no, I don't believe that. I think that they figure that it's not really carrying the same type of water as it was in 2021, 2022, and accordingly, they kind of moved off that topic. And one of the things that I think potentially we should not be moving off of is the tyranny that was displayed by the left in their reaction to January 6th. The ridiculous tyranny. Now, I don't know that that's like something that should become front and center, but I would say this. To the extent that we can help expose the ridiculous findings of the J6 committee, to the extent that we can help expose that the calamity of January 6th, which, let's face it, it was a calamity, that the calamity of January 6th was pretty much inspired, orchestrated, and coordinated by Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats, that I think that's something that's certainly of great benefit to exposing the ridiculous approach that the left has, which is basically we want to try and pretend that our enemies are these big boogeymen who have to be kept suppressed. Remember that was the messaging we got for 3 years. I'm part of some boogeyman cult, and everyone knows I would never be part of any type of cult. So with that, let's talk a little bit about a certain judge by the name of Reggie Walton. We should talk a little bit about a judge from Washington, D.C. He's a trial judge named Reggie Walton. I want to introduce you to Reggie Walton. And I'll be honest with you, he's not like the worst of the left at all. He's just a judge in the District of Columbia. And this is just where they come from. This is who they are. Let's take a quick gander and him appearing on CNN. Now, this is an interview that he had several months ago at the time that Donald Trump was first gagged by Judge Merchan. It was actually, given the nature of the conversation that I saw here, it seemed like this conversation happened, say, between the first and second gag, as I'll point out as we're going through this little interview here. And the reason I'm sharing this with you is just so you can appreciate who Judge Walton is and relative developments that he faced today. And this is him a couple months ago. That's not going to give you anything. That will be a lot better. Here we go. I always forget this woman's name. I don't remember her name. I don't know what pronouns this individual uses, but I can never remember this individual's name. And I think that's a better thing. Don't tell me. I don't want to know. I just know that every time I see this individual, I just sort of feel like Homer Simpson when he sees Marge's sisters. I just get this feeling of like, anyway, let's let her do her thing.
I should note that the gag order that the judge did put in place earlier this week doesn't apply to himself nor to his family.
No, there we go. Okay. That was the first gag order. The second gag order referred to his family. Can we get rid of this thing? I don't want to see.
Tonight, I want to bring in senior U.S. District Judge Reggie Walton, who was nominated for judgeships by both Presidents Bush 41 and 43. And it's great to have you here, Judge, tonight. And I just want to say thank you for joining us. And I think to a lot of people, the dangers of attacking a judge and his family and their family is clear. I wonder how you would respond to something like this.
Well, it's very disconcerting to have someone making comments about a judge, and it's particularly problematic when those comments are in the form of a threat, especially if they're directed at one's family.
Did he make threatening statements? Did he make a threat? I don't remember him ever making a threat. This is the thing that throughout this entire thing, they're kind of counting on you not reading any of his actual True Social posts, because he pointed out stuff that was happening with Judge Merchan's daughter, Lauren, and how she was a DNC operative who was being paid millions of dollars. He didn't even know it was $12.7 million this year. $12.7 million this year. But pointing out that, hey, the judge's daughter here is pretty much a lead campaign woman, owns a company, or certainly has significant control of a company that is literally the campaign team for his chief opponent at the time, Joseph R. Biden. I believe they represent Kamala Harris as well.
I mean, we do these jobs because we're committed to the rule of law, and we believe in the rule of law, and the rule of law can only function effectively when we have judges who are prepared to carry out their duties without the threat of potential physical harm.
And you know personally, what this is like. Someone threatened your daughter once as well.
Ooh, tell us about that experience. Tell us about when someone threatened your daughter, because now you'll be able to come in here and talk about how terribly wrong it was for Trump to actually make reference to the fact that Judge Merchan's daughter was being paid millions of dollars by his political enemies.
Yes, threatened me one day, and then the next day called and made a threat against my daughter, and also.
And I want to be clear. I want to be 100% clear. I'm not justifying in any way, shape, or form anyone who would literally threaten a judge. That's totally wrong. The point I'm making is that Trump never done such things. He never done such things because, I don't know, he's pretty sane. So he's never done that. No one should. Certainly not actually act out on any threats against judges. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I'm simply saying that doesn't mean you can't point out potential corruption and say, hey, what the hell's going on here? That's what they did. They basically said, how dare Trump ask what the hell is going on here when that is now thrusting someone? It's a threat against his daughter. What the hell are you talking about? But we don't want to focus on actually what he said or did. Instead, let's just go back to some hokey story. It's probably a true story about something that happened with Judge Reggie Walton.
Indicated my address, so they obviously had done some research to find out that I had a daughter and what her name was, and also where I live.
I mean, what's that even? That must be terrifying.
Oh God, you suck.
Well, it is.
What the hell kind of reporter are you? like what the hell what kind of reporter are you?
But you kind of have to appreciate that you can't let that impact on how you live your life and how you treat litigants who are before you, because even though threats may be made against you and against your family, you still have an obligation to ensure that everybody who comes into your courtroom is treated fairly, regardless of who they are or what they've done. But nonetheless, it is very troubling, because I think it is an attack on the rule of law when judges are threatened, and particularly when their family is threatened. And it's something that's wrong and should not happen.
Given that, I mean, and you said it shouldn't impact your work, but it's got to be something that's always kind of in the back of your mind when you're going to work, when you're leaving, to have those kinds of threats hanging out there.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it's a reality that
this is news.
It's not inconceivable that something could happen.
This is news. This is news. If she can only get confirmation from this judge that being threatened is not fun, is concerning. That's real news you're breaking here, honey.
Happen. We always have to hope that it doesn't occur. But, several years ago, one of my colleagues up in New Jersey, her husband was seriously injured, and sadly, her son was killed. And we had a judge out in Chicago who someone came after her.
So those of you coming in late, because I don't think that Krista Johnson's the only one coming in late. Those of you coming in late, this is Judge Reggie Walton. He's in the news today. And I just wanted to introduce you to him and basically having you hear his thoughts about the idea of a judge being threatened as they related to Trump being gagged back in March of this year. So I wanted you all to get a little feel for him. We'll get a little bit more out of him, but he is in the news today. So I just want you to appreciate what kind of day he had. And you can't really appreciate it without knowing a little bit more about Reggie Walton.
Her, unfortunately, she was not there, but her family members were, and several of them lost their lives. So it's a reality that we live with, but you try not to let it impact on your day-to-day life.
I don't expect you to get political here, obviously, but do you think that's something that Donald Trump considers when he posts something like this?
Don't get political, but here's a totally political question for you.
I can't get into someone's mind to say whether they appreciate the impact that they're doing, but I would think that any reasonable thinking person would appreciate that when they say things, it can sometimes resonate with others. And I think that's particularly true when you have somebody who has status in our society and they make certain statements. It can cause people to act on those statements, even if they don't necessarily intend for someone to do so. So I think it's very important that people in positions of authority be very circumspect in reference to the things that they say, so that they're not causing others to act on what they say and maybe cause injury or death to someone as a result of that.
What do you make of how the judge here, Judge Juan Merchan, didn't include himself or his family in the gag order?
Wait. Kamala. What? Is that it? Is that what you wanted from me? I don't know. I don't know how you want me to sing. Is she camouflage those? I'm not a leader. I'm not anyone's leader. I'm a leader of my own house. I'm a leader of my own house. That's it. My own kids. My own house. That's where I'm a leader. If I didn't spawn you, I'm not your leader. I didn't spawn you. So somehow the judge is the victim here. Clearly, yeah, judges are, well, to be fair, and I do want to be fair to Judge Reggie Walton, he's really not completely chomping at the bit to give her what she's looking for, which is like, Trump is a crazy person and that's a danger to the judiciary. He's really not chomping at it the way you would expect him to just quite yet.
Yeah, I understand why he wouldn't do that. I mean, again, I think we cannot make ourselves a part of the case. I mean, obviously we are a part of the case because we're presiding over the proceeding, but we can't make the case in the issue about us. And that can be very difficult, but it comes with the territory. I mean, first and foremost, when we take the oath of office, we have an obligation to make sure that all parties who enter our courtroom receive a fair adjudication, regardless of who they are, what their politics are, or what they've alleged to have done. And therefore, I think it's crucial that judges not make themselves a part of the issue. So I think the judge did the right thing by not including himself in the gag order.
You're someone who has always been really strong.
But then 2 days later, he ended up including his daughter and his family in the gag order. So not so much.
Straightforward in your assessment of the former president. You know, if you read your comments when you're sentencing people, when you're in these cases, you once referred to him as a charlatan at the sentencing of a January 6th defendant. I know you've gotten a lot of those cases before you. You've said that you don't think he cares about democracy, only power. That you once seemed to suggest you weren't sure he'd accept defeat if he lost in this election. Do you still feel that way tonight?
I'd rather not comment on that. I mean, I've made those, the comments I've made in the context of the sentencings I impose, because I'm hoping that what I say to the individuals who I'm sentencing will resonate with them and cause them to rethink the activity that they engaged in that brought them before the court, and hopefully deter them from engaging in further conduct of that nature in the future.
Unfortunately for him, after he made these comments, there was a decision from the Supreme Court which didn't really sit so well with him and those of his ilk. Specifically, I'm referring to US v. Fisher, which one of the main charges that was thrown at virtually every one of the J6 defendants. Some of the J6 defendants, many of them had multiple charges. Almost every one of them was hit with 18 U.S.C. 1512 C2, which Mr. Fisher challenged in court, which is obstructing. It's obstruction of an official proceeding, and basically jacked up the potential prison time to 10 years. It became it was a serious felony. And what they argued was that 18 U.S.C. 1512 was what Fisher argued is that that's not meant for this type of scenario. That 1512 C1 talks about basically destroying evidence, and then C2 says, or otherwise obstructs the proceeding. And that when you see the words or otherwise, you have to read that in context. What Jack Smith or those in the DC prosecutors were going after the Justice Department and weaponized by Merrick Garland to go after these J6 defendants was arguing is that we're going to use this 1512 C2 in a whole brand new way. And the brand new way we're going to use it is we're going to say this now applies to someone who went into the Capitol at a time that official business was being done there. And that's therefore, even though 1512 was created in the wake of the Enron scandal, even though it was written in order to try and stop people who are afraid that the government is breathing down their necks and were motivated to destroy evidence to make it more difficult for them to be convicted. And therefore, Congress passed 1512 C2, C1 and C2 and said, hey, look, if you get rid of evidence, we're going to throw you in prison for that act, something that you have a reason to believe will be evidence. So now that wasn't on the books when Enron was shredding stuff. So they wrote that in order to try and stop people from repeating, from duplicating the obstructive efforts of of a potential defendant. And now all of a sudden, the DOJ is trying to take that and say, well, anyone who's disrupting when there's an official proceeding, even though official proceeding in that context really was talking about a judiciary, it was talking about some sort of judicial proceeding that's designed to sort of try and adjudicate a matter. And it was talking in the context, if you look at C1, clearly of altering or in some way destroying evidence. But they say, well, even though no one's destroying any evidence over here, since the language of the statute could be read to say otherwise obstructing, that means this: if you were disrupting Congress when they were engaged in that business, that too is technically obstructing under 1512C2. Well, the Supreme Court looked at that and they're like, what the hell are you talking about? What the hell are you talking about? You have to look at a statute in terms of a statute under a concept of nocitur associus. And I'm not going to go through the entire thing. But the key word in C2 is otherwise. What do you mean by otherwise? Does the term otherwise mean any way possible of disrupting a proceeding? Or does it mean something similar to that which is written in clause 1? Is it and the way that every court in Washington was going along with the DOJ and says, no, it means any way possible obstructing, nothing to do with what C1 says. That's not how the Supreme Court saw it. The Supreme Court said, that's a ridiculous reading. When the way they worded it was, they said, I'm not going to go through the whole decision, I'm just going through a paragraph here. So the purpose of the otherwise clause is therefore, as the parties agree, under the concept of nocitur associus, known by its friends, the terms around it. It's a Latin term, which means known by its associates. You can tell what the word means by the words that are around it. Another concept, a legal concept that has a Latin term to it, a cool Latin term, ejustum generis, which means when you have a whole group of individual type of things, and then there's a collective. The collective is designed to incorporate anything similar to that first group. So those two legal concepts, nocitur associus and ejustum generis, those two terms basically are trying to explain how you read a broad term, how you define something that could be read one of two ways. And they said, look, the problem is defining exactly what exactly Congress left for C2. Perhaps Congress sought to criminalize all obstructive acts in Section 1512C, and having named a few examples in C1, devised C2 to prohibit the rest. The point of C1 would then be to illustrate just one type of conduct among many C2 prohibits. It would be subsidiary to the overarching prohibition in C2. And they start going through these different concepts of how we can try to figure out, and this is where they explain the general principles of nocitur associus, which says that we figure out what otherwise means. It's given more precise content by the neighboring words, or the concept of ejustum generis, which is a general or collective term at the end of a list of specific terms, is typically controlled and defined by reference to the specific classes that preceded. You can't all of a sudden make it a whole brand new type of thing. And this is what I loved about the way they worded this, as to why that you have to look at otherwise in the context of not just say this is something brand new, but in the context of C1. To see why, consider a straightforward example. A zoo might post a sign that reads, do not pet, feed, yell, or throw objects at the animals, or otherwise disturb them. So don't pet them, don't feed them, don't yell at them, throw objects at them, or otherwise disturb them. If a visitor eats lunch in front of a hungry gorilla or talks to a friend near its enclosure, has he obeyed the regulation? Surely, yes. Although the smell of human food or the sound of voices might well disturb gorillas, the specific examples of impermissible conduct, so we look at the specific examples they use, they all involve direct interaction with and harassment of the zoo animals. It's got to be something of the same ilk. So even though it says or otherwise disturb them, doesn't mean, well, you disturbed them because you were eating food and they smelled the food and that was disturbing to them. Every example they give here is something where you're interacting with an animal. Don't pet them. Don't feed them. Don't yell at them. Don't throw objects at them. In theory, it could be like, in theory, it could be some other way that you come up with to try and interact with the animals. That's what it means when it's saying otherwise disturb them. Not eating food in front of them. The specific examples, as they say, involve direct interaction with and harassment of the zoo animals. Merely eating or talking is so unlike the examples the zoo provided that it would be implausible to assume that those activities were prohibited, even if literally covered by the language. Even though technically, you could say, well, it says don't otherwise disturb them, and they found the smell of your food disturbing, so you were disturbing them. So they said that just doesn't make any sense. You sort of have to look at it as a grouping that fits the specific, that would fit the different categories and try to be more inclusive in that way. And accordingly, they said you can't look at C2 as being any type of obstruction. It's got to be something that's similar to C1. And what Fisher and these other J6 defendants were charged with, this type of obstruction, is in no way, shape, or form similar to the obstruction that the rest of the statute is talking about. And accordingly, they said to hell with that. That's ridiculous. You can't charge them with this because that's not what the statute was meant to say. So they knocked out those charges against Fisher, but Fisher obviously was not the only one who had those charges. And that leads us back to Reggie Walton. This Judge Reggie Walton today, despite the fact that he thinks that Trump is terrible influence on society and that all these people were influenced by him, he had the glorious task today of dismissing the 1512 obstruction charge that Ohio pastor William Dunphy was convicted with for January 6, saying the Supreme Court's ruling requires him to. Oh, no. Oh, dang it. Oh, man. He's not happy. He ain't happy. This is the first domino to fall. Hundreds of J6-ers will be freed because for many, this was their only felony conviction, which never should have been a conviction at all. Never should have been anything. They never should have faced anything. It was a ridiculous interpretation. And thank God that that Pastor William Dunphy is now going free. Because my God, this was so messed up. Some judges coordinated with DOJ have tried to find a way around SCOTUS's ruling, but this case now sets a precedent for all the other J6ers. I don't really agree with Behezy tweets that this is a precedent, because when it's at a lower level, it's not really a precedent, but it does signal that we're probably going to start seeing this more and more. Not because it's precedential, but because people are like, okay, how am I going to find a way around this when this other judge is now saying that they have to be let go? So it is significant. And I am, even though I was showing you what Reggie Walton was and his deep hatred of Donald Trump, I'm going to tip my cap to the guy. I'm going to tip my cap to him. And he's like, look, I hate that I have to do this, but this is just flat out what the law now is. Now, frankly, if he had bigger balls, or perhaps wasn't as influenced filled with anti-Trump rage, perhaps he would have realized how ridiculous it was that he was handling all these cases that incorporated this 1512 C2 charge, and he would have sentenced them to prison. That would have been asking a lot from him. But I can at least tip my cap to him that when the Supreme Court said that at the very least he did his job and said, I'm going to free Pastor William Dunphy because the Supreme Court is my boss. So I will tip my cap to him. I will say he probably is having a bad day. It's probably a bad day. This is not what he wanted to do at all. Not what he wanted to do at all. So one thing you probably do want to do, you probably want to do this at this juncture, and so I don't before you forget, is you might want to make sure that you hit the old like and subscribe button, because YouTube is slashing you away. They're just like everyone talks about, like Joe's a leader. Like I said, I'm not anyone's leader, but at the very least, we sort of have this sort of parasocial relationship here, and the only way it really continues is if you hit the like and subscribe. And too frequently, YouTube is of the opinion that they don't really like this parasocial relationship that we've developed here. So you can basically tell them you're not the boss of me. The only way you can do that, though, is hit like and subscribe. And if you are subscribed, if you think you're subscribed, just double check, because all too often, things change that you might not know about. All of a sudden, there's just new readings of how things are supposed to go. Brand new readings. I self-identify as Spawn of Joe. Spawn of Joe. That's funny. Chief cultist tell aliens to move the double X to Venus. What? What? I don't know what this means, honeybee. Who's the angry midget with the hatchet behind you? What? Did I don't know what I'm seeing. I don't know what you're seeing. I ain't seeing the same thing. Anyway, at this point in time, I think it's important before I get into the story of Ashley Babbitt or the housing for us to take a few moments to enjoy life. And accordingly, there's a few memes that I wanted to share with you all here. Some of you may not remember the show Quantum Leap. You probably don't remember Quantum Leap. If you raise your hand now, if you remember Quantum Leap, which featured Scott Bakula. Scott Bakula is the actor's name. You remember Quantum Leap? Guy would like jump from one body to another, and he couldn't control his jumps. He'd go back in time, forward in time, and all of a sudden his consciousness would be in someone else's body. And the show would always end with him sort of like zapping out. He would have to fix whatever problem that individual was dealing with. And then he would jump into a body. Whenever he jumped into a body, he didn't even know whose body he was jumping into. But that was Quantum Leap. I always wanted to see the pilot and figure out how that whole thing got started. Anyway, so that's why I had a particular appreciation for this thing. Sometimes he would be a baseball player. Sometimes he might be all of a sudden he's a vice president. Like he's just jumping from these different roles. And then he would spend a while trying to figure out, okay, who am I? And then he would look in a mirror. And when he would look in the mirror, he would see what the person looked like. The only way you could see what he looks like. We're always seeing Scott Bakula there. But the only way you could see what the actual character, individual whose consciousness he jumped into, what they look like to the rest of the world, is when he would look in a mirror. And then he would see someone else's reflection in there. And that's why I had a particular appreciation for this.
I'm retarded?
I don't know how they do these things. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how do they do it. Someone tell me how they do. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they do it. I saw that and I was like, that is so good. Oh my God. Oh my God. Speaking of the second lady and her husband, the 132nd man. Someone pointed out, he said, this is the contrast here between our two presidential candidates right here.
You know, we have to stay woke. Like everybody needs to be woke. and you can talk about if you're the wokest or woker, but just stay more woke than less woke. Yeah.
You know what woke means? It means you're a loser. Everything woke. Everything woke. It's true. Everything woke turns to shit, okay? It's true. Look at what's happening.
There you go. That's the difference right there. That is the difference between these two candidates. In case you weren't, it wasn't clear enough to you yet. In case it wasn't clear enough, I had two more things that I wanted to share with you that I thought were really good. I'll probably say the second one. I'll probably say the second one for a little later in the show. But this is I'll have one more here. One more. I thought this was pretty funny.
Kamala. It's Kamala, right? Got it. So, Camelia, you are now the Democratic presumptive nominee, but you're also one of, if not the most unpopular Democratic politicians in modern memory. I'd like to discuss your recent polling numbers.
Don't.
Got it. Now, what are your intentions, and do you and the Democrats have a plan to beat Donald Trump in November?
We have absolutely no intention, nor do we have any plans.
Okay, so your political career started when you were 29 years old, when you were having an affair with 60-year-old mayor of San Francisco, Willie Brown, who was married at the time. Do you recall this relationship?
I do.
You do?
I do.
So you're not even denying it?
It's no secret.
Let's stay here for a second. Body count. I'm personally at 200 lifetime, give or take. Where are you at?
I've lost count.
Give me ballpark.
By most estimates, at least 1,400.
Damn, 1,400? Are you sick? God, did you hear that?
I can't believe. Oh my God! This is now. There you go. I told you it's meme season. This is every 4 years we're gonna have this type of action. Unbelievable! It's not over.
1,400? Chameleon, with all due respect, people have a word for women that act in this manner, and that word is floozy.
One word. Pretty straightforward.
Last question. By my calculations, you are the first woman to literally sleep her way to the White House. What does your mother think about this?
She would say, Kamala, you may be the first to do many things. Make sure you're not the last.
This is crazy.
This is a democracy.
So good. Oh my God, that is so good. That is so good. I have the wall behind me. I could do something like this. Why don't I do something? I should totally do something like that. Should I make videos like that's gonna be my poll? I could totally do that. That's something I can totally do. With me interview. That's the poll. If you want to see me do work like that, put a 1 in Rumble. Put a 1 in the chat. I'm gonna and put a 2 if you say nah, that's don't go there. Don't go there. We're gonna call those interview type of funny interview. I'm gonna throw this
wearing
up.
Zaraza, but not you. You're beautiful.
Let me throw this up. Let me check this out. Let's do a poll. Quick poll. Start a poll. I'm calling. I'm just gonna use this for now. Where's Grifty? Was he the first on the starship connected to the con? Okay, there's no starships. Okay, it's not that type of. There's no spaceships. There's no Kool-Aid. There's no spaceships. There's no tracksuits that are mandatory. There's just there's no starships. I don't know where he had a baby recently. There was a little griftlet, and I assume that's where he is. If you're wondering. Where's the silver plaque? I haven't been approved by YouTube yet. It's a good question you're asking because I didn't check in a couple of weeks. I looked like a week or two after, but I haven't checked in a couple of weeks. I should really check on that and just have them ship that over to me. Now, do the Dukes of Hazzard meme? I missed that one. I missed them. I didn't see the Dukes of Hazzard meme. If someone wants to share that with me, I'll try to pull that up later. If you share it with me in YouTube. So sorry, not YouTube, on either locals or I'll probably find it faster, frankly, if you DM it to me. But I haven't seen the Dukes of Hazzard yet. A quick check over here with my what did you guys say? There's a lot of ones. There's a lot of ones. They're all ones. There's no twos. Oh, it was all the same guy voting. That doesn't count. That's all DB crazy. There's a handful of other people. All right. Okay. I'm not gonna Wait, that could happen? That could happen? Oh. All right. We'll see. We'll see. Okay. Where was I? Oh yeah. Let's talk. We should talk a little bit about the Ashley Babbitt thing, right? That's where we're going next. That is where we're going next. Ashley Babbitt. Oh, this is okay. There we go. So, in case you're unaware, a couple months ago, Ashley Babbitt filed suit against the United States of America for wrongful death, saying that they were responsible for her death and that their actions were wrongful. I believe that this could have significance. The reason that I'm bringing this up now is because today they made their first appearance in court to start creating a scheduling for when discovery is going to happen. Discovery can be very important in terms of the election. Now, normally a normal scheduling would have one side making demands within 30 days and the other side responding to those demands within 30 days. That is a standard scheduling. I have not had a chance to see the scheduling order in this particular case. The reason this is important is because, as I said at the outset, we heard so much about how, you know, the J6 was indicia of MAGA being this uncontrollable beast, which is going to come here and destroy democracy or some other stupid claim that the left has made. And you and I, at least I am, and you likely are aware of the fact that there was a lot of negligence, and so much negligence that it actually seemed willful in the way that they were trying to police the Capitol on January 6, 2021. And for that purpose, I think that it's possible. And admittedly, I would tell you this: not likely that'll come within the next 60 days. But so we could start seeing some drips and drabs as to exactly what the hell happened with policing the Capitol, which seemed very, very, very sus. Very sus. Now, before I go any further, I want to be clear that I am not endorsing any violence that anyone engaged in on January 6th. And I'm not simply saying that because YouTube wants me to say that. I'm saying that because even if they didn't want me to say that, I'd want to say that to you. I don't believe in political violence. I don't think that we are anywhere near that stage, and I would discourage any of you who would ever consider engaging in political violence to rethink and reassess your life, because it's only going to be self-destructive to you individually and self-destructive to anyone who has similar political opinions to you, because you just become the lightning rod of see how dangerous they are. They just proved it. So right now, the system is still workable at this juncture. While the system is workable, you work it to death, and it is still workable. So with that being said, I just want to be clear as saying I am certainly not endorsing political violence of any kind. I don't believe Ashley Babbitt was engaged in any political violence, and I believe that those who were engaged in political violence on January 6th at the Capitol were the exception and far from the rule. Most people, the vast majority of whom, were interested in the integrity of our elections and ensuring that, and certainly not interested in harming any other individuals, whether or not they worked for the Capitol Police or any other policing agencies. So, you see, I told you. Yeah, a lot of you probably are. You don't even know it. It's crazy. But anyway, so I want to take a quick look with you at this complaint. The complaint was filed by Judicial Watch. Judicial Watch is an entity started by Tom Fitton, which is designed to cast a big, beautiful spotlight, as Robert Gouvet would say, on corruption in government. And they're an important voice. And they're the ones who sent in attorneys on behalf of the estate of Ashley Babbitt. Without further ado, let's take a quick look at this complaint. So it was filed in federal court, which you have to do when you sue in the United States of America, in the Southern District of California. Now, this was an interesting call. I think strategically as an attorney, it's the right call. She lived in San Diego. The estate is in San Diego. Frequently, whenever there's an accident or some sort of incident, which is the primary focus of things, they will make it in the jurisdiction where that incident occurred. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see the United States try and have this case moved to Washington, D.C., which would be a jurisdiction which would be terrible for the plaintiff, as one can well imagine. Not that California is great, but anything, when it comes to J6 related incidents, anything is better than D.C. Anything. So it's unfortunate for the estate that her residence was in California, because frankly, if she lived in a state that was a little redder, she probably would have a lot better chance here. But at this point, we're looking at getting through discovery, and this is a lawsuit for $30 million for the damages that were sustained as a result of Ashley Babbitt being wrongfully killed. So, without further ado, let's get further into this. So, with respect to the parties, they identified the estate of Ashley Babbitt as a party, and Aaron Babbitt, her husband, as a party. And that he's bringing this in his individual capacity and on behalf of the estate of Ashley Babbitt. You can bring an action on behalf of yourself and any sort of organization that you are controlling. And that's essentially what he's doing here. Normally, an estate would be handled by the spouse. Defendant, they explain who the defendant is and that they're able to be sued under 28 U.S.C. 2674. And they extend in paragraph 6 here. We're not going to go through this part here. They just go through generically how they met the procedural guidelines and requirements for filing a wrongful death suit against the United States under 28 U.S.C. 2401, 2675. There's certain notice requirements that are special and different from a normal case. In a normal circumstance, if the defendant is not the United States of America, you don't need a statute to go after them. When it is the United States of America, the only reason you have a right to sue a government agency is because they give you that right. It's a very interesting little wrinkle that a lot of people may not realize, that you only learn about. In fact, I bet almost no one who hasn't been to law school recognizes that the only reason you ever have a right to sue a government agency is because they permit themselves to be sued. I'm going to say it again. The only reason you have a legal right to sue a government agency is because they permit themselves to be sued. So there's a federal statute specifically governing, saying there's a Federal Tort Claims Act, and then there's a wrongful death statute, which basically provides that in the event that a servant, an employee of the United States causes someone an injury, that you have a right to bring a tort claim against them. A tort claim means the tort claim is what you think of when you hear personal injury. It means someone harmed you, either intentionally or through negligence. So the right to sue the United States comes because there's a federal statute which permits it. But that federal statute comes with certain prerequisites that says, okay, if you're going to come after us, you have to give us notice within a certain period of time. That you would not have to give a private individual if you were suing a private individual who, let's say, hit you with a car or shot you. So there's certain requirements that you must fulfill, which are special and unique when you're suing the United States of America. Whenever you're suing someone who is working in their official capacity as a federal agent, and this could be a postal worker, that you don't sue the individual, You don't sue the agency. You don't sue the triple letter agency. You're just suing the United States of America. And that's why they're the only named defendant here. So they need to spell out exactly the role as to how they are federal agents. Capitol Police is a federal law enforcement organization responsible for policing the United States Capitol buildings and grounds under the direction and support of the Capitol Police Board, which consists of the following people. You don't care about that. Capitol Police have the power and duty to make arrests within the Capitol buildings. And the House Sergeant at Arms and the Senate Sergeant at Arms have the same law enforcement authority. And that tells you that and the point being that they are all working for the United States of America. And that's why they have to make the point here that they're not being sued for things they did individually, because if they were not at work and these same individuals took the same actions, the United States would not be a defendant. They have to be working in the scope of their office or employment, and that's how you have a claim against them. It's not like any time a postal worker goes postal that the United States gets sued, because they're not acting in their official capacity when they climb up to the top of a tower and start shooting up a Walmart. That's obviously not within the scope of their duties. As opposed to if they're driving a postal truck and hit someone, then they are in the scope of their duties, and the United States would be the proper defendant. One of the things that's interesting about this complaint is they give us some actual background as to Ashley Babbitt's day on January 6th. And I think this is something that too few of us know a lot about. So I wanted to share with you these facts here, because I think it's, she's really a martyr here. She's a martyr. This is a soul that was snuffed out. And, she was, as far as I know, she was going in there the same just cause that you and I certainly believe in, and many of you do as well. On January 6, 2021, at 2:44 p.m., Air Force veteran Ashley Babbitt, age 35, was shot and killed inside the U.S. Capitol by then Lieutenant Michael Byrd of the U.S. Capitol Police. So, boom, they start right away with, this is the chief complaint right here. Okay, this is what everything is leading up to. The bullet pierced Ashley in her left anterior shoulder, perforated her left brachial plexus, trachea, upper lobe of the right lung, and second anterior rib, and landed in her right anterior shoulder. Ashley fell backwards, then it flattened her back on a marble floor. Video recordings show her alive and conscious, writhing uncontrollably immediately after the shooting. Horrible. Ashley remained conscious for minutes or longer after being shot by Lieutenant Byrd. Ashley experienced extreme pain, suffering, mental anguish, and intense fear before slipping into pre-terminal unconsciousness. The point to this is this is part of her pain and suffering. They're not just being graphic for the sake of being graphic, even though this would be something that attorneys would put in because it's beneficial towards building sympathy and strengthening their case. That would not be the focus in a complaint. The focus in a complaint is to spell out why it is that you're entitled to the damages you're seeking. And this does lay in exactly to that, because you're trying to say we're entitled to these very high damages because she did suffer. It's not like as soon as the bullet hit her, she was singing with the angels. No, that she actually had to suffer first, and that's part of the compensation that her estate is entitled to recover for. The autopsy report identified the cause of death as a gunshot wound to left anterior shoulder with an onset interval of minutes. The fact that Ashley was alive and conscious in extreme pain and suffering is documented in videos. So there's videos of the shooting which reveal that she was still alive, and she did go through that suffering. Furthermore, nothing about the wound track described in the autopsy report would be expected to result in immediate death. So that's in case the government says no, we shouldn't be on the hook for any pain and suffering, because as soon as she was shot, she was gone, and she probably never even knew that she was shot. No, the autopsy makes it clear that was not the way. That she didn't have that mild blessing of not going through that pain. She did sustain that pain, and And she also didn't have loss of consciousness. She was conscious when consciously suffering through this. And Ashley's lungs contained blood, further confirming that she was alive and breathing after being shot. Clearly, if she had died right away, you wouldn't expect to see blood in her lungs. Ashley was pronounced dead at Washington Hospital Center at 3:15 p.m. The medical examiner determined the manner of death was homicide. Ashley had been living in San Diego, California, where she and Aaron owned and operated a successful pool business with her husband, Aaron. Now, the reason you point out this, the reason you want to say specifically successful, you want to say it's a successful business, is because part of compensation in a wrongful death case is you look at the person's financial prospects. You try and figure out, okay, what type of pecuniary damages has the estate lost because of the fact that she's no longer here. So that's why when it comes, if someone is a personal injury attorney, they far prefer that, I mean, it's going to sound ghoulish, but the reality is that the claim that is going to result in a higher payout, either through settlement or through jury award. And it's because jury awards will tend to be higher that settlement offerings end up being higher when the person has various factors going for them. If you ever saw the movie A Civil Action starring John Travolta, which is based on a true story. So he talks about how the best type of client is someone who is affluent and relatively young, not child, but hitting the prime of their life, where you can show the quality of life that they had. And if they're affluent, then you could say these are the financial damages. And he actually said it's sad, it's sick. It sounds sick to say it, but the reality of litigation is the more the person is suffering, you can show their suffering rather than a quick, ripping off a Band-Aid type of pain. But actually continual suffering for days, months, years, the longer that suffering is, the more sympathetic a jury will be towards giving a much more significant award. So someone who, is suffering on a day-to-day basis is in certain ways more likely to get a higher settlement than somebody than if the person had been killed on the spot. It's a little backward. It's a little backward that's the way it is. You can have a whole morality question as to what does that reflect about our consciousness about the value of being alive versus being dead, alive and in pain versus being dead. But it is a reality of the profession. Ashley traveled alone from San Diego to Washington, D.C. on January 5th to attend the Women for America First, aka Save America rally the next morning at the Ellipse, located just south of the White House. The rally featured President Trump, prominent conservative speakers. Ashley loved her country and wanted to show her support for President Trump's America First policies and to see and hear the president speak live while he remained in office. Ashley did not go to Washington as part of a group or for any unlawful or nefarious purpose. So don't try lumping her together with she's part of the Oath Keepers or something like that, which, some agency that has been maligned either rightly or in many cases completely wrongly, but that she wasn't associated with any group that was there. She was there to exercise what she believed were her God-given American liberties and freedoms. After the rally, Ashley, like a great many other patriotic Americans attending the rally, walked to the Capitol peacefully, a distance of approximately 1.5 miles. 2 undercover Metropolitan Police Department officers followed close behind Ashley as she climbed the stairs to the West Terrace. This is very interesting. See, I bet you didn't. I didn't know this until I read this complaint. So there's 2 police officers who are following behind her as she's climbing the stairs to the West Terrace. Ashley entered the Capitol. They didn't try to stop her. They didn't do anything to try and stop her. Ashley entered the Capitol and the Senate side long after others had done so. So she wasn't one of the people breaking through the windows. There were a lot of people who had already been in there. Once inside, Ashley encountered a female Capitol police officer who directed her to walk south toward the House side. Ashley complied, walking alone through the Capitol and ultimately arriving at the hallway outside the main door to the House chamber where demonstrators had gathered. From there, Ashley walked by herself east along the hallway outside the House chamber, then turned south, reaching the hallway outside the Speaker's lobby at the southeast corner of the Capitol. The Speaker's lobby is a long, rectangular corridor behind or at the rear of the House chamber that features portraits of past speakers of the U.S. House of Representatives. Behind the Speaker's lobby is the retiring room, an adjoining corridor of similar size and shape where members and invited guests can relax between votes or wait to access the chamber. The Speaker's lobby has entranceways at both ends of the corridor that feature rectangular double doors and glass panels matching side lights and glass transoms that fill both openings of the lobby. Just outside each entranceway is a small, narrow hallway with a stairwell that leads down to the first floor below. So right over here, you can see over here is where you're not going to see that. You can see over here. This is the. That's not doing anything. All right. Well. You can see over here is where the handrail is that goes down towards the balcony there, towards the stairwell. So that's the small narrow stairwell, the stairwell that leads down to the first floor below. The shooting occurred at the east entrance to the Speaker's lobby. After demonstrators filled the hallway outside the lobby, two individuals in the crowded, tightly packed hallway struck and dislodged the glass panels in the lobby doors and the right door side lights. So demonstrators filled the hallway outside the lobby. Two individuals in the crowded, tightly packed hallway struck and dislodged the glass panels. So these panels here were knocked out. Lieutenant Byrd, who is a U.S. Capitol Police commander, and was the incident commander for the House on January 6, 2021, shot Ashley on sight as she raised herself into the opening of the right door side lights. So I think it's this part over here. Let's see it. But yeah, well, that part over there is where I'm tapping. It's not doing anything. All right. Go back right and go. Lieutenant Byrd later confessed that he shot Ashley before seeing her hands or assessing her intentions or even identifying her as a female. Why is this not? All right, this is annoying. Lieutenant Byrd later confessed that he shot Ashley before seeing her hands. Ashley was unarmed. Her hands were up in the air, empty, and in plain view of Lieutenant Byrd and others other officers in the lobby. Ashley posed no threat to the safety of anyone. Not one member of Congress was in the lobby. And I think this is an important point here. There's no one there in the lobby. Why is this doing this? It was guarded by multiple armed officers. All this is basically they're trying to set up here how this was not a scenario where there's a need to shoot someone who's coming through the window. There's no person there who's a member of Congress. There's plenty of police officers there. She's not armed. Additional armed police officers were in the hallway outside the lobby and or the adjoining stairways. There's plenty of cops around there. Stop worrying. Ashley could not have seen Lieutenant Byrd, who was positioned far to Ashley's left on the opposite side of the door, so she had no way of even avoiding him because she didn't know that he was there near an opening to the retiring room, a distance of approximately 15 feet. An angle of approximately 160 degrees. Sergeant Timothy Lively, one of the armed officers guarding the lobby doors from the hallway, later told officials investigating the shooting, "I saw him. There was no way that woman would have seen that." So she had no way of even knowing that someone was pointing a gun at her chest. Lieutenant Byrd, who was not in uniform, did not identify himself as a police officer or otherwise make his presence known to Ashley. Just she's going through that window, and boom, not seeing the guy, not seeing a cop there, not knowing that there's any cop there, boom, she's shot in the chest. Lieutenant Byrd did not give Ashley any warnings or commands before shooting her dead. And these are all designed to show just how little chance Ashley had here to comply with any police instructions. You call out to her and you say, "Stay in back or you will shoot." Nothing. If he's wearing police uniform, holding a gun aimed at her, you would think she would be shooting. She would think she would withdraw. At 2:45 p.m., or within 1 minute after shooting Ashley, Lieutenant Byrd made the following radio call. So first he shoots her. Then he says, "We got shots fired in the lobby." Why are you saying "we got shots fired in the lobby" when it's really "I just shot someone in the lobby"? We got shots fired in the lobby. We got shots fired in the lobby of the House chamber. Shots are being fired at us, and we're prepared to fire back at them. You're not prepared to fire back at them. You had fired back at them. In fact, you had killed one of them. We have guns drawn. Please don't leave that end. Please don't leave that end. Yeah. So he's claiming that people are shooting at him a minute after he delivered the fatal blow to Ashley Babbitt. Approximately 35 seconds later, Lieutenant Boyd made another radio call saying, 405B, we got an injured person. I believe that person was shot. You believe they were shot? You believe they were shot? Why? Just because you discharged your gun into her chest and she fell backwards? Is that what led you to believe it, Lieutenant Byrd? In fact, no shots were fired at Lieutenant Byrd or his fellow officers. The only shot fired was the single shot Lieutenant Byrd fired at Ashley. He's not trying to respond to shooting. He's the only one shooting. He heard the loud noise of the gunshot. He saw her fall backwards from the window frame. And this all helps basically show the incompetence of Lieutenant Byrd. That you're sitting here, that you're either a liar or you're incompetent. You think shots are being fired at you. But there's not this. It displays how poor a choice he was to be in that place at that time making these decisions. We'll just cover a couple of chats here. You thought it did get moved to DC? Did it? That's possible. I didn't check that out. It's possible. I get unsubscribed every day. I resubscribe every night. Been here 2 years. Renee, God bless you. God bless you. Everyone say, God bless you, Renee. You're awesome, Renee. It's crazy. It's really crazy. I wonder how many people... It's very aggravating. So you're saying by default government has immunity, but Trump did not until SCOTUS made it so. No. Government is the government itself, not any individuals in government. Meaning the state of Colorado has natural immunity, but every state and every government agency has passed statutes that allow you to sue them. It's just that there are invariably different rules for suing a state or suing a federal government. That's the point. Already sounds like misapplication of deadly force. Oh, I agree with you. Here, the loud noise of the gunshot saw her fall backwards from the frame. The facts speak truth. Ashley was ambushed when she was shot by Lieutenant Byrd. Ambush. Multiple witnesses at the scene yelled, "You just murdered her." That's really not evidence of anything other than, I guess, it could be their impression of the situation. That was, but I don't think that's they're not hanging their hat on that. That's for sure. Lieutenant Byrd was never charged or otherwise punished or disciplined for Ashley's homicide, which is just shows you the level of corruption and that they don't give a damn about justice. This is all about narrative. I mean, in no way disciplined. If anything, they laud him as a hero. All right. Count 1, assault and battery, intentional shooting and killing of Ashley. Now, when you have a situation like this, is this an intentional act or is this an accident? So when you're an attorney drafting something like this, you're going to cover your bases because you don't know if it's going to be deemed to be an intentional act or if it's going to be an accident. So you don't know how the finder of fact, likely a jury, is going to assess this. Plaintiffs reallege all preceding paragraphs as if fully set forth therein. Federal Tort Claims Act applies to any claim arising out of assault or battery, otherwise listed torts in regard to acts or omissions. On January 6, 2021, Byrd, by his own admissions, intentionally shot Ashley with his firearm. He doesn't deny it. He said he did. He was trying to shoot her. At the time of the shooting, Lieutenant Byrd was an employee of the federal government acting within the scope of his employment. Lieutenant Byrd fatally injured Ashley as a direct result of this shooting. The shooting was not privileged. And this is really the whole key to the case. This is the claim that Ashley's estate is making, where you can be confident that one of the defenses that the United States is going to put forward and saying that it was privileged and was with legal justification. Not that it was consensual, but that he had legal justification. And that is really that's what this whole case ultimately is going to turn on. Was he legally justified or in any way privileged to take that shot? The United States is liable for Lieutenant Byrd's assault and battery against Ashley. Count 2, negligence. If you don't believe that was intentional, you believe that he was negligent, let's get into the negligence. Under District of Columbia law, it is well established that a police officer's lack of due care can give rise to negligence liability for the intentional shooting or death. In the negligence action under D.C. law, plaintiff, and this is why, frankly, it makes a lot of sense to go back to D.C. All the witnesses are there. Whenever the site of the accident is there, that's almost that seems to be the wisest place to do it. And even here, you're applying D.C. law, so you can understand why a D.C. court should be the one that's overseeing that rather than San Diego or Southern District of California or any other jurisdiction. Much as we might hate it, it is a reality. In a negligence action under D.C. law, a plaintiff must prove the applicable standard of care, a deviation from the standard by the defendant, and a causal relationship between the deviation and the plaintiff's injury. So what does this mean here? What does this paragraph mean? You have to show, whenever you're dealing with there being any sort of negligence, so first you have to show that there is a standard of care. These are the guidelines as to what you are supposed to be doing. Then you have to show that you didn't follow those guidelines. You deviated from the prescribed protocols. And then you have to show that it's because of that deviation that someone suffered an injury. That if you had been following the protocols, there would not have been any injury. But it's your failure to follow it, you deviate away, that's why someone suffered an injury. That's what they're laying out the legal standard here in paragraph 26. In police cases involving excessive use of force, the applicable standard of care is the duty to act as a reasonably prudent police officer. And this is going to be a very pivotal element to this case. Was he acting as a reasonably prudent police officer would act? And I can assure you, we're likely to have various different conflicting expert testimony, but there's certainly going to be proffers. Each side's going to want to bring expert testimony to show that this was reasonably prudent or not reasonably prudent. That's because that's going to bring us back to this whole question here as to whether or not he deviated from proper protocols. The standard of care is to be found in the practices, in fact, generally followed by other comparable governmental facilities or some nationally recognized standard. So there's two ways to sort of figure out what the right yardstick is. You can either say this is what is customary, or you can have some national standard that this is what police officers do in a similar circumstance, what they're directed to do. USCP Directive 2053.013 Cap Police Rules for ensuring exemplary standards of personal integrity and high professional standards of conduct. And Directive 1020.004, its regulation on the safe use of firearms and use of force generally, both bear on the standard of care expected of Lieutenant Byrd when he shot and killed Ashley. So those are our governing protocols. Each directive is consistent with the police policies, practices, and procedures generally followed by other comparable governmental facilities and or nationally recognized standards, which is one of the other things that it fits within both of them. It's both what other people do and nationally recognized standards, as well as the duty to act as a reasonably prudent police officer. Both directives were in effect on January 6th. Additionally, Byrd was the designated incident commander. That was his title. That was his role for the House that day. The Capitol Police, like most law enforcement agencies, has adopted the National Incident Management System, called NIMS, making a key part of the Capitol Police policies and procedures. NIMS is standardized on scene, and that's basically the guidelines that he's supposed to be following, and the plaintiffs are about to allege he failed to follow. It requires an agency to identify an incident commander. What are they supposed to do in this? You're supposed to figure out who will establish an incident command system to manage and coordinate the response to an emergency. So obviously emergencies are going to come up and police are going to have to come to focus, and there's certain protocols that they're supposed to go through in those scenarios. So first things first, you have to say who the incident commander is. It might not be someone who's normally a commander. It's someone who's there, and they're perhaps the ranking individual there. So the police are all supposed to say, okay, let's take a quick assessment of who's here and who is the commander in this based on their seniority, experience, whatever, probably rank. Incident commanders may be designated by location where an incident occurs over a broader area. Everyone has a designated role to help support the incident commander. So he's sort of the chief of the area. Byrd's role as incident commander for the House on January 6th bears substantially on the standards of care that apply to his conduct on that day. Because he's and I think where they're likely going with this is they're going to say because he's the commander, that now changes his level of responsibility, his duty of care to even greater than other police officers. It's easier for him to be deviating it because there's going to be a lot more protocols that he has to follow because he's labeled the incident commander. When Byrd shot and killed Ashley on January 6th, he breached multiple applicable standards of care governing the safe use of firearm, perception and assessment of imminent threats, use of force levels, and escalation, de-escalation of force, perception and assessment of relevant facts, the use of warnings, firing backdrops, and obtaining timely appropriate medical aid, among other breaches be identified through discovery. This is an area that, especially when they go through discovery, they always want to be as broad as possible when you're the plaintiff here, because you basically are shooting at a lot of, pardon the pun, I wasn't thinking about that, but when you're drafting a complaint like this, you're trying to help walk through and say, any one of these, if he breached it, there's negligence, which, we're going to argue resulted in her death here. But there's multiple different ways where we can see that he was negligent. Had Lieutenant Byrd adhered to these standards, he would not have fired. Ashley would be alive today. What's the negligent use of a firearm? Well, 253.03 states, with respect to safe use of firearms, sworn employees will not, we'll get 3 nots on that one, discharge any firearm nor use any handle, any weapon in a careless or imprudent manner. Sworn employees will carry, store, secure, and use all firearms and weapons in accordance with applicable law. 1020.004 says that when you're using a firearm, firearms may be withdrawn from their holsters only when officers are preparing for expected, prudent, and lawful discharge. So it's not even supposed to come out of the holster. It's supposed to be holstered at all times unless you're expected for a prudent and lawful discharge to protect themselves or others from imminent death or serious physical injury. So in order to justify pulling it out of his holster, he has to say that we had a justifiable fear of imminent death or serious physical injury. Now, if you've seen the video, it's possible he could establish that. I'm not saying he can't. I'm not saying he can't, but when you're the plaintiff drafting this, you're certainly going to be saying most reasonably prudent officers would not have assessed that to be imminent death or serious physical injury. To avoid unintentional discharges, officers must keep their fingers off the triggers and outside the trigger guards until firing is imminent. Which we may not know whether or not he violated that. Under USCP Directive 2015.013 and 20.004, other generally accepted regulations governing the safe use of firearms and firearms training and duty to act as reasonably prudent police officer, Byrd was required to adhere to the following standards of care, among others, on January 6th. What was his duties? First, he's supposed to refrain from using or handling his firearm in a careless or imprudent manner. Second, he's supposed to holster his firearm until the moment when a reasonably prudent officer would believe and therefore prepare for expected and lawful discharge. And the key is you have to know that it's going to be a lawful discharge. And C, to keep his fingers safely off the trigger. However, that's not what happened here. Byrd breached these standards of care in the following ways. He unholstered his firearm before he even saw Ashley, and therefore before any expected prudent and lawful discharge. He couldn't have even seen her when he unholstered it. While leaving his position in the retiring room and advancing and moving to the doors of the speaker lobby, he failed to maintain his unholstered weapon at low ready, and instead pointed his firearm at no fewer than 3 people. No, this guy's waving his guns around. He's like, oh, there's a guy, there's a guy, there's a guy. He looks like, he looks like some short, chubby woman working for the Secret Service. What the hell's happening here? What's happening? No fewer than 3 people on the other side of lobby doors in the direction of Ashley, and as many as 7 uniformed officers positioned near her in the hallway. So he's not even threatening, just his recklessness is not even potentially harm. Is not merely potential harm to people who are making a siege on the Capitol, but even the police themselves are in danger from this guy. And this to me, from what I'm seeing, is probably the best chance, because his failure to hold at a low ready, that is to me a bigger problem than unholstering. We've all seen various incidents at the Capitol and various people screaming and crazy mayhem that's going on there, where you might say, okay, unholstering it because you think there might be a serious physical harm coming to people soon. That is okay. But failing to hold at a low ready, instead just waving it around like, and not even like screaming out a warning, that sounds kind of crazy. That to me, I'm just speaking as a layperson in understanding how police are supposed to handle situations, because I am a layperson when it comes to like what are the proper procedures for police to follow in this type of, let's assume that the jury's going to say this was a riot. Okay, let's just start with that mindset. It's especially if it's been transferred to DC, there's certainly going to be in that mindset. So in a riot, you can say, okay, look, he's charged with defending Congress here. So, and these people are barreling through the door, they're breaking through the door. Unholstering your gun makes sense. But why are you holding it, waving at people instead of keeping it at the low ready position? And C, holding his finger inside the trigger and tapping his finger on and off the trigger for at least 14 seconds before he saw Ashley shot. That is another factor. Like, what the hell is happening there? What the hell is happening there? I was unaware of that until I read this complaint. Under USCP Directive 1020.04, deadly force is authorized only when the officer perceives the subject person and subject poses an imminent danger of death or serious physical injury to the officer or to another person. So, Is that what he's perceiving from Ashley? Is he seeing that from Ashley? Under 2053.013 and 20.04, generally accepted police standards regulate the safe use of firearms and training and the duty to act as a reasonably prudent officer. Byrd was required to refrain from aiming his firearm at Ashley and pulling the trigger until a reasonably prudent police officer would have perceived her as an imminent threat to his life or the life of another person. And this clearly he could not have found because she's unarmed. She's a little woman unarmed climbing through a window. How the heck is she an imminent threat to someone's life? Lieutenant Byrd breached his standard of care by failing to diligently assess the appropriateness of using deadly force against Ashley. And that's part of his job. Specifically, Byrd admitted during an interview on NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt that he had no clue about the person he shot and that it did not matter whether that person was armed. What? Doesn't matter. You're only allowed to fire if that person's posing a deadly threat, and you're saying it doesn't matter if he's armed, if that person was a man, woman, armed, anything? Really? I didn't even know it was a female until hours, way later that night, he added. Instead of diligently assessing the appropriateness of using deadly force against Ashley as an individual in the moment, he shot and killed her at 2:44 p.m. Lieutenant Byrd negligently, if not recklessly, assessed all persons inside the Capitol as an imminent danger to House members at this point, which that's crazy. So he has a right to just start shooting everyone? Imagine he discharged 5 shots, just shot this person, that person, this person, that person. Would that be okay? An announcement came, the Capitol breached at 2:12 p.m. My rules of engagement never changed, Lieutenant Byrd said. Negligent use of force levels, failure to de-escalate under 2053.013, which says that sworn employees will use only such force in any situation that is reasonably necessary. I don't like how this thing is making me do this over and over again. Getting annoyed by it. And now it's just so they can only use such force in a situation that is reasonably necessary under the circumstances. It's still doing this. Stop this. USCP 2053.013 says every arrest, search, and seizure will be in accordance with applicable laws. Can you just highlight without asking me every time? USCP Directive 1020.04 says it is the policy of the department to allow officers to use only the level of force that appears reasonably necessary to effectively accomplish their lawful objective. According to USCP Directive 1020.04, Department recognizes the following 5 levels of force that may be applied by officers during the performance of their official duties. So what are their 5 levels of force? Number 1 is cooperative controls. This level of force includes methods to preserve officer safety and survival, including officer presence, communication skills, and restraint applications. These controls can also be used at all levels within the parameters of use of force. Then they have contact controls. When confronted with a subject demonstrating resistant behavior, the officer uses low-level physical tactics to gain control and compliance. These tactics can be physical and can include additional verbal persuasion skills, Fine. That's the next step as to what they're supposed to do. Then they have compliance techniques. That's not working. When the subject becomes actively resistant, the officer uses physical control tactics. These tactics should be of sufficient force to overcome the subject's active resistance. So that's when they're actively resistant. Then they have defensive tactics. At this level, the subject attempts or achieves an assault on the officer or another person. The officer is justified in using defensive countermeasures. That's it, defensive countermeasures designed to cease the subject's non-lethal assault. That's what he's supposed to be engaging in, defensive tactics. These tactics include baton strikes and blocking techniques. Could have done that, should still be alive. Then finally, it comes up to lethal force. When you have that, when the officer perceives that the subject poses an imminent danger of death or serious physical injury to the officer or to another person. Then we have the next element to 1020.004, which says that officers should escalate and de-escalate the amount of force they use in accordance with subject's actions. Give them a chance to comply. Give them some chance. Once the subject is under control, the officer must de-escalate the amount of force to the lowest level necessary. The officer must also weigh backup officers, show strength in numbers. The use of, I don't know if he could have done in this scenario. Use of lethal force solely to effect or maintain detention is prohibited. You cannot use lethal force to effect or maintain detention. Stop. Under USCP Directives 1020.53 and 1020.004, generally accepted police standards regulating the safe use of firearms and duty to act as a reasonable, prudent police officer, Byrd was required to bring the appropriate level of force to the demonstration in the hallway. He had to de-escalate. That was his job. That's what his duty was. Byrd breached the standard care by entering demonstration at level 5. This guy comes in there like a lunatic. You're just entering. You're just coming in here. We're just getting started. You're like, oh, whoa, let's go to level 5 right away. We're at lethal. We're threat level midnight. What the hell's wrong with you? You're a friggin' lunatic. The highest level of force, unholstering his firearm, pointing it at Ashley and others through the windows by the east lobby doors, among other breaches we identified through discovery. I actually think you're doing a great. This is such a well-written complaint. This is a really, really well-written complaint. My biggest concern is that in D.C., who the hell is going to listen to him? Lieutenant Byrd's firearm was aimed in the direction of 4 officers from the USCP elite and well-armed containment and emergency response team who had just reached the hallway after ascending a stairway from the lower floor. 3 other uniformed USCP officers who were descending the same stairway as a house sergeant and arms employment, and on information believed other federal law enforcement officials in the hallway. So you got all these police around there. And you want to know how else Byrd breached the standard care? That when he saw Ashley in the window opening, he failed to apply only that level of force that a reasonably prudent police officer would find necessary. He just went to level 5. He could have gone to level 2, level 3, get out the baton, start smacking the baton at the door. But he didn't do that. He didn't holster his firearm and make his presence known to Ashley and say, hey, step down or you're going to get seriously hurt here. Or identify himself as a police officer. He also didn't warn Ashley of the consequences of advancing beyond the window or over the barricade bracing the lobby doors, nor did Byrd attempt less than lethal means to apprehend Ashley. Supposed to be using less than lethal means. A factor that is especially significant given at least 4 other armed officers were in the lobby with Byrd to assist him in apprehending Ashley if necessary. And then there were another 7 officers either in the hallway with Ashley or on the stairs leading to the hallway. Indeed, Byrd negligently, if not recklessly, believed that rather than applying only the level of force that a reasonably prudent police officer would find necessary, that it was his job to shoot Ashley and or anyone else who attempted to trespass the lobby doors. Imagine if that was the imagine if that was like the standards that were being applied at a Target. Like the store Target. Quote, I hoped and prayed no one tried to enter through those doors, Lieutenant Byrd said when asked for man pull the trigger. He also said no one else attempted to enter into that hall after or before because he fired upon Ashley, killing her. Oh, aren't you a friggin' hero? Aren't you the friggin' hero? I didn't bother warning. I'm the hero because I killed someone. Jackass. I hope her soul haunts him forever. On the USCP Directive 2053.013 and 1020.004, generally accepted policing standards regulating the safe use of firearms and training, Byrd's tactical conduct and decisions preceding the use of deadly force are relevant considerations. And in particular, Byrd was required to actively perceive and assess the facts and circumstances before using deadly force. That's what his job said. Byrd, who's a commander of the incident, commander for the House on January 6th, had a heightened obligation to have an accurate and complete information because of his role as the commander of the incident. He breached the standard of care by misperceiving the following key facts and circumstances, among others to be identified through discovery, and failing to use due diligence to perceive and assess these same key facts before he engaged in deadly force. What are those 5 facts? Well, first and foremost, when you talk about how this moron was trying to do his job. So first, he erroneously believed that there were approximately 60, 80 people in the House chamber. And that was just members and their staff. A reasonably prudent officer in his position would have been aware of the fact that only 6 members who chose not to evacuate, including 5 members of law enforcement and or military backgrounds, and 1 undefeated mixed martial arts champion remained on the House floor. So you're sitting here trying to basically defend a battalion as if there's all these innocent lives, that dozens of innocent lives you need to defend. A prudent officer in his position would have been aware that although 12 to 15 additional House members and staff were in the House gallery, these individuals were 1 level above the House floor. So who the hell are you defending there? What would have been the great calamity if the entire crowd came through there? And this is this should be really relevant, because that's a location that could not be accessed directly from the main level of the chamber. Byrd erroneously believed that members with mobility issues were present in the speaker's lobby with him at the time of the shooting. Quote, we had a few members that are, I don't want to say disabled or Nancy Pelosi or Adam Schiff, or they waddle along like Jerry Nadler. There was Jerry Nadler who was there. Have you seen how slow that guy moves? He can't hightail it. He can't hightail it out of the way AOC would. Or have limitations as far as being able to run and move fast. And some of those individuals were directly in the lobby with me at the time of the incident. Some of them were Dianne Feinstein, who was just like, or completely, or drunk out of her mind Nancy Pelosi. You can't expect her to be able to move. A prudent officer in Byrd's position would have been aware that, in fact, no members, disabled or otherwise, were present in the lobby. How do you not know what you're trying to defend? It's like he's trying. It's like, imagine someone trying to defend what they perceive to be a collection of. They're claiming that they're defending a collection of priceless works of art, when it's like some refrigerator drawings. And yes, it disgusted me that I just referred to members of Congress as if they were priceless works of art. If you want to shame me for that, have at it. But you understand the purpose of the analogy there. You understand the purpose of the analogy. So what else did he do wrong? He erroneously believed that any breach of Speaker lobby doors was significant because if they get to that through that door, they're in the House chamber and upon the members of Congress. That's what this jackass claims. In fact, the demonstrators were nowhere near the House members, most of whom had been evacuated. A prudent person would have been aware that the East lobby doors were nearly impossible because he and others had erected a barricade of heavy furniture and chairs inside the East lobby doors, if not prevent access to the Speaker's lobby. Also, the windows in the East lobby door were narrow and would allow only one fit person at a time to pass through them if they were breached. A person passing through a window would have to climb over the barricade before stepping foot on the lobby floor, where he or she then would have to contend with at least 5 armed officers. Moreover, someone in Byrd's position who wasn't a lunatic would have been aware that the few House members and others who remained in the chamber were protected not only by Byrd and 4 other armed officers just inside the East lobby doors, but several additional armed officers who were located at the West lobby doors, and more officers. You had a whole battalion there. And other additional police units have been called to the location only 3 minutes before Lieutenant Byrd fired his weapon with the following radio call. The crowd at the House main door is heading around to the glass doors on the rear now of the chambers. You need all units to go there and hold the glass. So a not insane individual like Lieutenant Byrd would have been aware of the call because not only was Byrd both the commander at the incident and the incident commander for the House on January 6th, but USCP directives requires employees who assign radio or other communication equipment to keep said equipment turned on and the appropriate channel at all times while on duty. So, the call got out there and was definitely heard. Byrd erroneously believed and acted on a false radio call, false report of shots fired in the House floor occurring before he left the House floor and moved across the Speaker's lobby. So this guy thinks that there's a whole war zone going on here. No shots are fired anywhere, but he believed that there have been shots on the House floor. So he's going in there with this PTSD syndrome, basically saying, I gotta go out there, guns are blazing, and shoot little girls. There were reports of shots fired through the House main door onto the floor of the chamber, he said. Reports of shots fired. Really? Who made that report? Of course that changed your posture, he said. I drew my weapon, took tactical defensive stance and posture to protect myself. Yeah, there were no friggin' reports like that. And if there had been reports, that would be other members of the United States government who were lying and basically making the situation worse. You don't need to, and here's the thing I want to just point out to you for a second. You don't need to show that Byrd individually was negligent. You can establish that the U.S. Capitol Police were negligent as an entity. So if someone is wrongfully claiming that there's shots fired on the House floor when no such shots were ever fired, that's clearly making a more dangerous situation, as you can see the impact it had on Lieutenant Byrd. So it's creating a dangerous situation. First Legal is suing Arizona for not complaining to clean up their voter rolls. You think that it'd be successful? At least they're trying. Cleaning up of the voting rolls is a very, 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 very important thing that the left desperately tries to stop over and over and over again. I can't speak to Arizona specifically, although we obviously have seen the issues with Arizona's ability to conduct a fair and free election. But I know Wisconsin was notorious in refusing to clean up outdated ballots. Like And what do you mean by cleaning up a voter roll? What does that mean? Some of you might be confused by the term. It means someone moves away, someone dies. So you're supposed to take them off the list of registered voters. That's cleaning up the voter rolls. But they don't clean them off. And that just means that makes it possible for someone nefarious to cast a ballot for them. So he should have been aware of the fact that the report was false about there being shots on the House floor. They wouldn't rely on the call without some investigation, assuming he heard such a call, because Sergeant Paul McKenna canceled the call almost immediately, but he's still acting as if it's almost like one of these lunatics, like in the Pacific Islands, like some Asian Pacific Islands, who, like, in the 1960s thinks that World War II was still going on. That's basically Lieutenant Byrd here. Well, in this case, there never was a World War II at all. It's just a claim of a World War II. This man announced that the sound was glass breaking, not shots being fired, then reissued the shots fired call, creating substantial uncertainty about the call's accuracy. Byrd was in a position to communicate verbally with McKenna, as well as others on the House floor, including Officer Reggie Tyson and Congressman Troy Nels, a career law enforcement veteran, also on the House floor, both of whom heard the sound and believed and were determined it was glass breaking as a result of a flagpole penetrating the glass on the House main door, not shots fired. Shards of glass were also visible on the House floor. And finally, Byrd erroneously believed he was trapped. We're trapped in here. Mesquite and others had barricaded lobby doors at both ends of the lobby. Once we barricaded the doors, we were essentially trapped where we were. There was no way to retreat, no other way to get out, because we had both sides of the corridors. So you're essentially trapped, he said. A prudent officer in his position would have been aware of the fact that, in fact, only the doors in the east end of the lobby had been barricaded. What the hell are you talking about? You weren't trapped. Doors on the west end, which were used to evacuate House members in the chamber, had not been barricaded and remained open at the time that he killed Ashley Babbitt. Byrd erroneously believed that there were no officers present in the hallway in the opposite side of the east doors. I had no knowledge that those officers were there. I had no visual communication with them. Why not? You're the freaking incident commander. There was no call over the radio explaining to me that these officers were there. A prudent officer would have been aware that, in fact, 3 armed USCP officers had been ordered to guard the barricaded east lobby doors, but this guy was incompetent and didn't know what the hell was happening outside the doors. Not only should Byrd, as incident commander, have known that the officers were in the hallway just outside the east lobby doors, they were clearly visible from inside the lobby through the lobby door if you weren't so charged up that you have to go out there guns a-blazing. They were in uniform. They got their police patches. It's visible. At least one was wearing a USCP ball cap. So I didn't know there's any officers there. I don't know. It's not my fault. I didn't know there were any police out there. There's a Sergeant Arms guy there. Byrd erroneously believed he was the last line of defense. As an officer, you rely on our CRT, which is, our containment team. And if they don't make it there to stop the threat, you're the last line of defense. Oh, I'm such a hero. I was the last line of defense, even though there was like 47 people behind me. It's up to you to take appropriate action based on circumstances, especially given his role as incident commander of the House. A prudent officer in Byrd's position would have been aware that, in fact, in addition to the 3 armed uniformed officers outside the lobby doors, 4 CERT officers had reached the east lobby hallway before he killed Ashley. He erroneously believed there were hundreds of people in the hallway, which is how we know that. He said the chants got louder. I couldn't make out what they were saying. It sounded like hundreds of people outside the door. Anyone who had a brain would recognize that hallway outside the lobby is too small to hold hundreds of people. The officer Lanciano estimated the crowd size at between 15 and 20 individuals. There's hundreds of people here. I gotta start shooting them all. While second uniform officer guarding the doors, Officer Kyle Yetter estimated crowd size between 60 and 80 individuals. Video demonstration hallway shows that the former estimate is closer to the real number. Byrd erroneously believed Demonstrators in the hallway had caused more property damage than was the case. They're knocking down all the barricades, crashing through the doors and windows of the East Lobby. The barricade had not been knocked down. He also believed he shot Ashley to save the lives of members of Congress and myself and my fellow officers. And he believed Ashley was a threat. She's a threat. But anyone in his position who was reasonable would have realized that she was unarmed, small in stature, did not pose a threat of imminent death or serious physical injury to Byrd or anyone else, just by climbing through a window. And he admitted, I couldn't fully see her hands or what was in the backpack or what her intentions of. It was later, I found out the subject didn't have a weapon. You're a real friggin' hero, Byrd. And then they go on about how he failed to warn, maybe just call out, hey, stop or I'll shoot, like every person in any movie ever. When practical, you identify yourself as a police officer and give the subject a warning of the imminent use of lethal force. Did you try that? Did you try that? No. He was required to identify himself as a cop and issue a warning to Ashley before he killed her. She's not a fleeing felon. The circumstances didn't establish that she posed a threat of imminent death. Byrd, who was not in uniform, was wearing a face mask, breached the standard care, among other breaches. He failed to identify himself as a cop, failed to give Ashley explicit verbal commands, and warn her of consequences, and he failed to give her an opportunity to comply with those commands. In fact, he didn't give her any commands. He just said, "I'm just going to blow this person away." And he admitted it's possible his warning was inadequate. It's possible. He said that people on the other side of the lobby doors could not hear him because he could not hear what they were saying. What warning? He didn't give any warning. He couldn't see, people couldn't see him speaking. Was he standing there cowardly behind everyone? I know it was difficult for anyone to see me verbally speaking because we were wearing masks because of COVID. Yeah, COVID. COVID's a big problem. YouTube wants me to tell you that COVID is a big problem and that you should talk to your doctor, because I'm definitely not a doctor. I don't have any medical advice here. YouTube wants me to tell you that COVID is a big problem, that you should talk to your doctor to make sure you stay safe from that disease and any other disease. And I am telling you that. So this lunatic, under basic firearm safety rules, no target is so important that an officer cannot take the time before he pulls the trigger to be certain of his target and where his shot will stop if misses. Intended target or ricochets in another direction. So Byrd was required to make sure he knew who and what was behind Ashley before he pulled the trigger, and this guy didn't know anything. He breached his standard of care by firing when 3 USCP officers and 4 CERT officers, excuse me, were right behind him. I'm going to double sneeze, I'll tell you that right now. That's not a promise, but it's a pretty good bet. The hallway was also crowded with demonstrators in harm's way of a stray bullet. If he had adhered to that standard, he would not have fired, and Ashley would be alive today. USCP directives also say that officers are required to obtain appropriate medical aid as soon as possible or practical for individuals who show signs of any injury. And duty to act as reasonably prudent police officer, Byrd was required to obtain appropriate medical aid. He breached his care. How did he do this? He failed to obtain appropriate medical care for Ashley. In fact, instead of immediately calling for medical aid, he waited up to 1 minute, then used his radio to make a false report of shots fired at this office speaker lobby. So instead of making a proper report, he's basically trying to say, "Oh, we're under fire here." Then waits another 35 seconds to report an injured person was shot. Second radio did not report the critical information needed to potentially save Ashley's life. In fact, those details were not broadcast until 2:47 p.m. or 3 minutes after the shooting, when the following radio call was made. Don't know if this went out over the radio. We got one civilian down with a GSW to the chest on the east side of the house lobby area. Maybe you can go clean them up because I don't give a damn whether they live or die. If we can have responding medical units from the west side of the lobby, we need it ASAP. Oh, good morning. And these injuries were fatal for Ashley. So now in count 3, they go to negligence of other individuals who were there. So now we just went through all the flaws with what Lieutenant Byrd did. Let's talk about the negligence of other people who were working for the United States of America in that building that time. So you got Sergeant Timothy Lively, Officer Kyle Yetter, Lanciano, and Third Officers Robs, Don Smith, Brandon Sykes, Mike Brown. They owed her a duty as well. Jason Gandalf, who had arrest authority, owning his status as House Sergeant at Arms. The officers were talking in front of the east lobby doors when Ashley entered the hallway. Seeing Ashley, officers formed a line in front of the doors. Lively was standing in the center of the lobby doors. Officer Yetter was standing on his right side. So now we're coming back to more story about what was happening, which is in the building there. Lanciano was standing on his left. Independent journalist Taylor Hansen caught up to and followed Ashley into the hallway. Hansen recorded the scene on video and also spoke with officers briefly. Within 2 minutes, approximately 30 demonstrators filled the narrow hallway. Zachary Allen made his way to the lobby doors and, reaching over the officers, began striking the doors and the glass panels in the doors and side lights. Allen cracked the glass of both the left door and left door side light as Sergeant Lively, Yetter, and Officer Lanciano stood with their backs to the doors and did nothing to control or stop him. So these officers are all there. They see the mayhem, the brouhaha. Everything is rising in a crescendo to more and more to more and more dangerous situation, and they do nothing to try and stop it. They're just rolling around. You know, there's another day at the Capitol. Oh, this is interesting. Oh, look at that guy. He's got a red hat on. At one point, Allen was directly next to Ashley, directly in front of Officer Lanciano as Allen struck the glass of the right lobby door sidelight in the tightly packed hallway. Video recordings show Ashley, a U.S. Air Force veteran who had served as a military police officer and guarded high-value military assets and troops, high-level national security officers and dignitaries in the Middle East, as well as captured terrorists and even nuclear weapons, plainly distressed by Allen's unrestrained conduct. Standing directly in front of Lively, Officer Yetter, and Officer Lanciano, she pleaded with the officers to do something, shouting as loud as she could, "Call effing help." Wow. Wow. She, Ashley herself, told them, "Call help here." Instead of controlling, de-escalating, or stopping Allen, Lively, Yetter, and Lanciano moved away from the doors and stood along the adjacent wall to the right of the doors. They said, "It's not my problem. I'm not doing nothing to calm the situation down." Then they began exiting the hallway using the stairway along the right side wall, passing Ashley in the small, crowded space. As they did so, Rob, Smith, Sykes, and Brown arrived on the scene ascending the same stairway, which itself was crowded. The first CERT officer to reach the hallway was only a few steps from Ashley. When Lively, Yetter, and Lanciano moved to the wall, Chad Jones joined Allen in striking the doors. The glass panels, again, only steps from Ashley in the narrow, crowded hallway. Allen dislodged the glass panel in the right door, then moved to his right, striking and dislodging the glass panel in the right door sidelight, through which Byrd shot and killed Ashley moments later. Ashley was directly behind Allen in the tightly packed space. Jones struck and dislodged the glass panel in the door, then removed the panel and placed it on the floor. So now you got the window is popped out. What are the officers going to do? Well, Lively, Yetter, Lanciano, Robb, Smith, Sykes, Brown, they're all there. None of them did anything. You're going to try and de-escalate it? No, we don't need to de-escalate. We're not going to do anything about Allens or Jones tearing apart the Capitol. We're totally cool with this. There's 7 of us. There's 2 of them banging on the doors. We can't do anything to stop that. They didn't call for any backup. They're like, what are backup going to do? There's 7 of us here. We can't figure out what to do. What would another 20 of us do? We're all useless trying to control the situation. Gandalf, a 20-year veteran of USCP, was also present. At one point directly behind Ashley. Just like the rest of them, He did nothing to control or de-escalate. So these guys breached their duty to act as reasonably prudent officers by not only disobeying the order to guard the doors and abandoning their post, in which case she doesn't get through the doors, but also doing nothing to control, de-escalate, or stop Allen Jones. They also failed to call for backup. And who knows what the hell else we'll find during the course of discovery. The other officers all failed in the same way. And the U.S. is liable for their negligence because they're working for you. Let me just call out here. Howie Brown, gifting. I'm going to give you one of these because I can. 5 Good Lawgic memberships. 5. Count them. 5. I just want to point out to you, if you were one of the people who were gifted, please give your gratitude to Howie Brown for bringing you into the following, the greatest not at all occult type of cult you've ever been a part of. Welcome aboard. There are no spaceships. No one should think Grifty was taken away by some aliens to a paradise-type planet where he's enjoying the pleasures of sun and fun on ocean waves. That's not at all what happened on some superior planet to Earth. No, we don't believe that happened to him here because the following is not at all a cult type of cult. There's no Kool-Aid, no self-harm, no harming others. There's definitely no medical advice. There's no tracksuits that are mandatory. There's mild farm work, no virgin sacrifices. Don't throw them into volcanoes. There are meetings every Tuesday wherein we decide how to fix the world. There's no squirrel mutilations. There's no self. It's not at all a cult type of cult. Welcome aboard. Welcome aboard. It's just the following. It's about community, unity, leadership training. Really what it is. But thank you, Howard. Thank you so very, very much. Let's wrap up this thing here because I got some funny things I want to share with you that I think you guys are gonna like. We're almost done here. I want to learn about all the negligence that led to Ashley Babbitt being murdered by Lieutenant Byrd. So the next argument is negligent supervision, discipline, and retention of Byrd. So they did a crap job. This point is that they did a crap job in how they oversaw Lieutenant Byrd. When an employer knew or should have known his employee behaved in dangerous, otherwise incompetent manner, and that employer, armed with that actual constructive knowledge, failed to accurately supervise the employee. So you should basically, the point to this claim is you knew this guy was a loose cannon. You knew this guy was a menace, a danger, and you unleashed him on the public, and the victim was Ashley Babbitt. So to establish this, you have to show the employer breached the duty of the plaintiff to use reasonable care and supervision and retention of an employee, which approximately caused harm. So the Capitol Police and the board, and ultimately Congress, as their employer, knew or should have known that Byrd was prone to behave in dangerous, otherwise incompetent manner, and owed Ashley a duty to use reasonable care in making sure that they didn't unleash him on the public. How do they know this? Less than 2 years before January 6th, on or about February 25th, 2019, Byrd had his loaded Glock 22, the same firearm he used to shoot and kill Ashley Babbitt, and he left that Glock in a bathroom at the Capitol Visitor Center complex. His loaded Glock was discovered during a routine security sweep later the same day. So this guy's just leaving his guns around because he's a sloppy cop. Approximately 15,000 to 20,000 people pass through the CVC, which serves as the main entrance to the visitors of the Capitol daily during peak season. Lawmakers and staff charged with oversight of the USCP were not made aware of the incident until contacted by a reporter. So they don't even know when their cops are leaving their Glocks around. Oh, whoa! What was I supposed to do? I was watching a game on my phone, and then I had to put my Glock down in order to, zip back up. And the next thing I know, I'm leaving it there on the urinal. That could happen to anyone. His police powers have been revoked more than once before January 6th because he didn't bother meeting or completing semi-annual firearms qualification requirements. He had a reputation among peers for not being a good shot. So this guy who's a terrible shot is the one waving his gun around the crowd. And he's supposed to be given 1 week of remedial training. And if he fails to qualify after remedial training, police powers are then revoked. And he should have his revoked. His police powers also revoked for prior off-duty shooting into a stolen moving vehicle in which the occupants were teenagers or juveniles. Stolen vehicle was his car. He fired multiple shots at the fleeing vehicle in a suburban area. Stray bullets from his firearm struck the sides of homes nearby. An official investigation found that his use of force was not justified. This is a guy who has a pattern of firing off his weapon. Byrd also had one prior use of force matter that was originally sustained by the Capitol Police. He appealed and was found not guilty by the Disciplinary Review Board. And as far as we know, there's a lot of other incidents with this reckless, terrible crap shot who loves practicing at living targets. And these people failed to supervise him. Capitol Police, the Capitol Police Board, Congress, they all failed to supervise him. They left this guy in a place where he becomes the incident commander, for crying out loud. This is the guy, despite multiple serious warnings about his dangerous and otherwise incompetent behavior. You let this reckless, incompetent guy and made him incident commander. And sure enough, Ashley's dead because of it. Then they hit on him for negligent training, but this guy doesn't know what the hell he's doing. They're supposed to conduct regular in-service firearms training. They didn't do that. He is supposed to have training in First Amendment demonstrations, crowd control, breach of occupation. You think if he had some training, maybe he doesn't start. He's the only one who's discharging his weapon there. Maybe he holds back if he actually had some damn training. No training for you, Lieutenant Byrd. What about the trainings of other officers that they basically said, oh, we're not going to do anything about crowd control? This is I have to tell you, really well-written complaint. Really, really well-written. And all their supervisors are responsible for their crap training of Byrd, Lively, and the others. And as a direct result of that, that's why she's gone now. And then we have survival action. Under DC Code 12101, on the death person on whose favor right of action has accrued for any cause prior to her death, the right of action survives. So, as direct proximate result of the assault, battery, negligent training of defendant United States employees while acting in the scope of their difference, Ashley suffered extreme conscious pain. That's the pain I referenced earlier. But they want to get compensation not just for the fact that she's gone, but for the pain that she suffered during the minutes that between her being shot and her losing consciousness. And finally, wrongful death. And what are they asking for? $30 million. Submitted by Judicial Watch. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't say this all the time. I really don't. I don't say it all the time. This is a very, very well-written complaint. I don't know. I've never heard of Robert Patrick Sticht or Paul Orfanettis, but I will tell you, these are very intelligent attorneys. These are very skilled attorneys. Very skilled attorneys. Now, that being said, so where are we at here today on this as we wrap up this part of the story and move on because I got more I gotta talk about here. So today sorry, I didn't want to delete that. I don't know where you went on me. I lost this clip. Give me a second. This is what I wanted. So it is in D.C. It did get moved to D.C. It was filed in California. They got moved to D.C. And frankly, I can't blame the California court for recognizing the jurisdiction of D.C. As much as it's terrible jurisdiction, it makes sense. You're invoking D.C. law. The incident took place there, which is almost always going to be the overarching thing. I understand why you want it in California, because as bad as California is for a J6 claim, it's certainly infinitely better than D.C. But it has been moved to D.C. Babbitt, a former senior airman with U.S. Air Force, lone rioter. Lawmakers were torn over whether the shooting was justified. Will also be heard Tuesday. This is not what I wanted. Well, anyway, today there was supposed to be a scheduling conference. I apologize. It's not the right. All right. The scheduling conference is where we start getting to discovery. The reason this can be significant, as I said at the outset of the story, the reason this can be significant is because we will learn. It certainly is feasible that we'll learn more about what the hell was happening at the Capitol as they look into, because they say that there are other negligence, there's other forms of negligence when there's discovery here, as far as, maybe they were told to stand down, maybe they were not supposed to engage. She was welcomed into the Capitol. Why is she being welcomed into the Capitol? This gives an opportunity for countless depositions that Judicial Watch, an entity which is notorious for exposing corruption in DC. That's what they live for, essentially. Tom Fitton is great at this. Now it's an opportunity to interview and depose under oath countless police officers and find out, what instructions did you have? Why did you not de-escalate? Why were you welcoming them inside? Why didn't you stop Ashley Babbitt before she went upstairs? What instructions were you given? Who gave you those instructions? These are all things that will have to come out during the course of discovery here, which can prove pivotal as far as our ultimate understanding as to what happened on January 6th. That's why this case has significant, not simply as far as getting justice for Ashley Babbitt, which that alone would rank it as far as having significance, but it can actually have a wider significance in actually helping us learn and uncover more facts as to exactly what instructions the police got with respect to how to handle the siege of the Capitol. Because that plays into whether or not they were negligent, whether or not there was negligent supervision here. All this plays into to these claims, and that's why we should anticipate, as this case proceeds, that we're going to start learning more and more. And it's not just that we're learning more and more; it's that the attorneys who are handling this Judicial Watch, they're an entity which is notorious for publicizing and sharing that information with the public. So that's why this is very significant, a significant case. And I'm looking forward to seeing how these attorneys, who seem like they're very competent at drafting. They're very competent at drafting. I can't tell you how good they are in the courtroom. I can't tell you how good they are at discovery. I've learned from covering enough of these trials and watching enough different attorneys work that when you look at some attorneys, as you would expect, some of them have very strong skills in this area, weaker skills in other areas. And my objective is to share with you my assessment as to their skills in various areas that we see them try to perform. What I will say is this: with respect to those two attorneys from Judicial Watch, their drafting skills are excellent. Excellent. They took a complicated complaint and made it something that was easily digestible, and only leaving in there pertinent facts and laying out one cause of action after another, the facts that tied into it. I was a very big fan of the complaint. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to win. This is very tough to win in DC. Very tough. Very, very, very tough. And it's unlikely they're going to be offered a settlement. Yeah, sure. George Floyd, his family gets offered settlements of tens of millions of dollars, and oh God, we love you. Here's your tens of millions of dollars because it's politically expedient. It's politically inexpedient for them to offer any money to Ashley Babbitt's family. And they're probably going to say, yeah, we don't think a DC jury is ever going to find us guilty. So that would be another justification to say, we're not going to offer you much of a settlement. But that does mean that we get the whole discovery here fleshed out. And that's something we should all look forward to. Squirrel burgers are better than bugs. Change my mind. It's that's like saying like urine tastes better than blood. Like why? I have a whole bunch of videos I want to share with you here. This one's going to make you laugh. A couple that I want to make you laugh. This I could not do. Although I wish I could. I'm going to warn you. This is parody. I don't want you to think I'm trying to misinform anyone. This is parody. It even says Barack Obama endorses Kamala. Parody. All right, with that, this is good work.
Congratulations.
Oh my goodness.
Now, listen, let's be clear. You are the puppet, and I'm the puppet master. Just call me Daddy. Big Daddy Barack. From now on, you're my bitch, both literally and figuratively. Now, look, we're going to rig this thing just like we did for Joe. So you don't have to really do anything. Just don't fuck it up. But it would be nice if you could pretend to not be a total idiot. Just.
Oh my god. Oh my god, this is so good.
Just don't fuck it up. But it would be nice if you could pretend to not be a total idiot. Just until November. Like, don't talk about shit you know nothing about.
AI is kind of a fancy thing. It's, first of all, it's 2 letters. It means artificial intelligence. But ultimately what it is it's about machine learning. And so the machine is taught.
Is she a kindergarten teacher? Like, seriously. Like, I don't understand the words that come out of it. What motivates you to say the things that you say? Why are you the way that you're not? You're AI. I'm convinced who does this? No human talks to people this way. I want to explain to you the way cameras work, okay? Because when a moment happens, the moment is after it happens, it's gone. And what a camera does is it records it so you can later look back and see the moment again. You can see it at a different time. It's like the moment just gets recreated all over again. So that's what cameras do. Cameras take pictures, sometimes video, which is when the pictures look like they're moving, but they're not really moving, are they? They're not really moving. They're not. It's like, what is wrong with this woman?
And so the machine is taught.
And look, we get it. You like Venn diagrams. You don't have to keep reminding us.
I love Venn diagrams. I love Venn diagrams. I love Venn diagrams.
And for the love of God, stop with the laugh. Your laugh, it's weird. It's a weird laugh. You scare people. It's not even a laugh. It's more of a cackle. You're like the Wicked Witch from The Wizard of Oz, except you're brown. You're like a cross between a human being and a hyena. You're like a transgender version of the Joker. All right, now look, we need this rigged election to look real. And we know that nobody really likes you, so this is what we're going to do. We know you can't fill a stadium like Trump. So what we're going to do instead, we're going to bring in a popular musician by the name of Megan Thee Stallion. Now, Megan Thee Stallion is going to host a free concert. This concert will be in Atlanta. And so now here's the twist. You're going to come on stage and speak for a bit. Then we pretend that it was a Kamala Harris rally. Then America will think that you can fill up a stadium just like Trump does.
It's funny because it's true. It's funny because it's true. Oh my god. Oh my god.
In Atlanta. And so now here's the twist. You're going to come on stage and speak for a bit. Then we pretend that it was a Kamala Harris rally. Then America will think that you can fill up a stadium just like Trump does. American voters are stupid. They'll totally fall for it. And when speaking, I want you to try to sound as black as you can. Instead of saying everyone, I want you to say y'all.
And you all helped us win in 2020, and we're going to do it again in 2024.
Black people love that shit. I grew up in Hawaii, but hell, it worked for me. All right, what do you think?
I'm looking forward to doing this, getting out there, being on the road, and we're going to have some fun with this too, aren't
we? So good. So good. That was really good. I think I'm going to save the whole housing thing for another time because that complaint this took me a while. So I mentioned I was going to talk about how Kamala's plans for the housing board are a disaster. But there are a couple of other videos I wanted to share with you. First, I promised I was going to check on X and see if I had anyone sharing with me other memes that they wanted me to cover. Today's Wednesday, right? Why's Eric Hunley asking me today? Doing a quick check here. I haven't vetted these memes. It's not that. I did reach out to Judge Joe Brown, by the way. Oh, Christy Lee shared with me the other video. That video. So I already had that one. The one we just watched. This is the Dukes of Hazzard. Okay, this is the one I didn't see yet. I'm just giving you a warning. If you're watching on YouTube after the show, I might end up having to cut out the next minute and 10 seconds. I have a feeling it's going to be a copyrighted song you're all about to hear. I got a bad feeling about this. I got a bad feeling. Yeah, you see, I got bad. I can't play this. I know I can't. I can't play it. I can't. No, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I'll share it over on Locals, which is goodlogic.locals.com. In fact, I'll post it right now on Locals. Those of you who, I'll post it in the chat there at goodlogic.locals.com, and then I'll make it a separate post over there at goodlogic.locals. Diggers, are you still awake, Diggers? Viola's still awake, at least. I'll share it over there with the Diggers. So that was the Dukes of Hazzard thing. Because what ends up happening is I play the song, and then 20 minutes after I close out, the thing gets blocked. Then I have to and no one can watch the video, and then I have to edit it out, and you basically say, okay, delete the music or delete the song or delete that part of the video, and it takes YouTube 7 hours to actually accomplish that. And then they're like, okay, now it's yellow. Now you have to fight about being yellow. And it's just like the 1 minute, which I'm sure I would really enjoy, and I'd love to share my enjoyment with you on that. I know how these things go. I've been through that. I've been through that rodeo before. I did have other stuff I wanted to share with you. What do I have here? Yeah, JD Vance. JD Vance was a friggin' boss today. A friggin' boss. So there's two moments with JD Vance being a boss. What Nathan just shared with me. Yeah, let's see what he shared with me here. My diggers. My diggers. My diggers. What up, my diggers? Let's see what he gave us here.
To stay woke. It's not about who's the wokest or the woker. It's about just stay more woke than less woke, you know? Now, I know that everybody's heard I have picked my VP candidate. Tim, where are you at, Tim? He's probably in the men's restroom stocking the tampons. Tim, it doesn't matter. If we lose, we're going to burn this place down to the ground. Poof. Minnesota Freedom Fund. Now that I've announced my VP, Tim Tampon. Tell the Americans to look over here real quick, okay? Look right here. All right, keep looking. I was never the border czar. No, it's not. No, it is not. I am not Indian. I am black. And Joe Biden's been fine for the last 4 years, okay? All right, stay woke. Hashtag woke. And that's how you win. We have to stay woke.
Not bad. Not bad. I'm not going to go through all the ones he sent me. He sent me like 4 of them, Nathan. I'm not going to go through all of them. Not bad. I give that like a B. I give it a B. Better than I could do. That's for sure. Anyway, I wanted to share with you all 2 moments from J.D. Vance. This is a shorter one. This is him acting boss today. Where you at? Where you at? Here we go.
How can you fake your race?
So this is a reporter asking Vance how you can fake your race, which is what he said Kamala has done.
Both Indian and black, how can she fake her race?
She fakes who she is depending on the audience that she's in front of, and that's who she is, and that's who she's always been. Sir.
And you all helped us win in 2020, and we're going to do it again in 2024.
She never says 4. She never says 4. No one says 4. The hell are you talking about? I mean, I'm from New York. I say 4, but that's I'm from New York. I mean, what do you want? What do you want? That's not how she talks. But this is actually what this is the one I really want you all to see. Jack. Look at what this guy did today. Look what he did today. He's a bit of a stirrer. He's a bit of a stirrer. Notice who's walking with him in the Secret Service, who was assigned to J.D. Vance. I don't think it's her. I think this woman is skinnier. I don't think it's Holster Secret Service girl. I know you can't hear. I know. It's not me. It's not me. But I think it's going to get louder in a second. No, this is really not good. Let's see if we make this a little bit louder. Let's see if we boost this.
Because the vice president does.
There you go. That's much better. Let's do this one more time.
I know you're covering the vice president here. I figured I'd come by and wanted to see a good look at the plane, because hopefully it's going to be my plane in a few months. But
That's Kamala's plane. So he's saying hopefully it's my plane in a few months.
I also thought you guys might get lonely because the vice president doesn't answer questions from reporters and hasn't for 17 days. Have they given you guys an
He actually said 17, not 7 days. You can read along with him.
explanation for why she won't take questions from reporters? No? Nobody? Okay, great. Well, I hope that she changes your mind because it'd be good for the American people, and I think it'd be good for you all if she actually ran a real campaign instead of one from a basement with a teleprompter. So have a good one, guys. See ya. What would you like to hear from her?
Calling her out that she's not. I mean, think of how terrified she must be. Terrified she must be to answer questions, like how incompetent everyone around her must recognize her to be. That she's not answering questions from the friendliest reporters who are hoping she does well. Join me and answer, like, you know, what's your favorite ice cream? That's what they should ask her. Maybe get her to like start answering questions.
I'd love her to answer the questions. I'd love her to just answer what she wants to do and also explain why every single position she has changed. She pretends to be a prosecutor, yet she pretends to be a tough on crime prosecutor, and yet here she is wanting to keep on the police. She's the border czar, that she's opened up the American southern border. This is a person who has to answer the questions from the media, and it's disgraceful that she runs for you guys. It's also insulting for the American people. But anyway, we're going to go do our event. I appreciate you guys being here. I wish she paid you some more attention. See ya.
So there you go. Wish she paid you some more attention. She seems to ignore you. I'm just telling you all this. My being in touch with the cultural zeitgeist is I listen to my wife and mother-in-law when they're talking about politics. Okay. And this day, like the rest of the country, they're getting more into it as we're getting closer toward election season here. And bothered by the polls. The fact that in some places she's leading, they say that my wife saw Lady Lawgic saw something today showing that Kamala has a lead in the national polls now for the first time. Tell you the same thing I told her. Don't sweat it. Don't worry about it. August is the time that Democrats shine. August is the time that Democrats shine. She's going to shine all the way through the convention, and then she's going to have to start answering some questions. And that's when people will realize, oh, yeah, this is why we hate her. And Tim Walz is kind of a weird dude. I love the nickname Tampon Tim. The reason he has that nickname is because he's desperately trying to stock boys' bathrooms with tampons. And that tells you everything you need to know about Tampon Tim. It's also good because of his stolen valor. A lot of people are talking about the fact that he are bringing to you precisely what I brought to you last night, which is this guy claims that, we should know Americans shouldn't be armed with guns that I carried into war. You didn't carry any guns into war. You didn't carry any guns into war. You served in the military, National Guard for 24 years. As soon as your unit was deployed, you said, I am out of here. I am out of here. We saw a whole video on that last night. A whole video. Because Tampon Tim was never about actually carrying weapons into war. He was about being part of the military and being part of the numbers. But when it actually came to serving his country in a way where he himself would be put in personal exposure, he was not willing to do that. He's not the leader that he pretends he is. Instead, he's going around saying how, I fought over in Iraq and I'm in a different operation, freedom. And he's full of crap. He's full of crap. And the public is starting to recognize it. So I think that this is a pick that's going to blow up in his face. I will tell you this. I think he'll do well in a debate against Vance because I think he can gaslight. I think he's full of gaslighting. But I expect Vance to hold his own against him. I think that's actually going to be like a powerhouse debate. It's an interesting thing when the undercard is actually two people who are much more effective at debating than the premier event. But I do think we're going to probably see a debate between Vance and Walz, and I think that he's probably going to hold himself well. I've seen Walz speak. He can speak well. He can speak well. He speaks like an effective politician, and he's full of crap. Just gaslight. But there's so many ways to catch him up about how completely ridiculously woke he is. How he's opened up Minnesota, wants to turn it into a sanctuary state for illegal aliens, has turned it into a sanctuary state for trans, wants to basically promote having as many lunatics come into his state as possible, have no idea who they are, while also welcoming, and when I mean lunatics, I mean two different types of lunatics. I mean both adults who we have no idea what country they're from or what their intentions are when they come here, and they just walk across the border carrying who knows what and how much fentanyl and how many weapons or any other purposes as to why they're here. And he wants them all to come hoarding into Minnesota. And he also wants any kid who's confused about their body to come there so they can get medical treatment without having to talk to their parents. He wants any girl who's pregnant to basically come in there and get an abortion when she's 41 weeks pregnant. And then if the abortion fails, that you should basically be able to leave the kid on some table, keep him nice and warm as you watch him wither away and meet until malnutrition destroys that little infant. So this is the lunatic that Tim Walz is. He's a weird dude. He's weird tampon Tim. That's what he is. And I think he's going to be exposed. But that's not going to happen in August. So the numbers you're going to see in August are going to be bothersome. Just be patient. Wait. Everything's going to look rosy. September is when they start to collapse. Don't worry. And with that, I thank you all for joining me. I am going to wrap up and land my plane over here. Make sure I didn't miss anything over in the ghetto. Oh, I did miss in the ghetto. Pinochet's helicopter tour is saying they will never get to trial before the election. Oh, I'm definitely not getting there. At that point, the communists will have abolished courts anyway, not that justice can ever be found in D.C. again. Yeah, okay. For me, it's the discovery. And they'll start getting discovery before then. Last week, Pinochet says, last week, the MA legislature abolished the Second Amendment. The legislature and DHS are now arming the illegals here to execute anyone who resists after the election. You're very doom and gloom, Pinochet. You're very doom and gloom. No more shooting competitions, out-of-state hunters, etc. The Massachusetts State Police have no idea what is legal and tested firearm anymore. Since none are, they cannot be sold. What? I'm going to have to look into that. I didn't share over. Did I share? I did share. Okay. All right. Yep. As Judge Matty said, plane is landing. You know what that means, okay? If you see lab meat, just leave it in the sun. Let it get moldy, covered. Let the maggots eat it. It's not for you. It's not for humans. It's meant for woke folk, okay? It's not meant for humans. It's meant for AI. It's meant for maggots. It's not meant for you. What it's meant for is the bugs, but you shouldn't be eating the bugs either. Don't eat the bugs. Don't eat the bug food, okay? No bugs. No bugs, no bug food. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. Soltron wants to get the final word in here. He says, I heard today that when Walz ran for governor, he got demolished in a debate versus his Republican opponent. He declined to debate against him again. That's that. All the better. All the better. All the better. I thank you all for joining me. I will be back here, God willing, tomorrow evening. Until then, look out for yourselves. Look out for your loved ones. Good night and Godspeed.